What's up, folks? Welcome back to the stream. It's Tuesday. We're getting tactical as we do every week. And today we're going to be talking about some of the new factions that have released this past week, because we're starting to get some competitive results in for armies using for armies using those factions. I talked about one of them on my video yesterday. That went 5-0 at the Rise of the Empire GT in Houston, Texas. It was pretty cool at Canoptek Court, but there's also a bunch of X and 1s. A lot of the larger events had a ton of Necron X and 1s. We also can look at some RTT results, some winning record or undefeated results from smaller events, and then maybe transition into some other factions as well if we want to cover those. Hope everyone's having a good week. Hope everyone is ready to talk about some war hamsters. And I guess a little bit of a housekeeping. We got some streams happening this evening as well. I do have a pod finals game scheduled. That should be Chaos Space Marines versus Adeptus Sororitas. Kind of an interesting matchup. Two very competitive armies, so that's going to be a tough game. That is going to be commentated, so I'm not playing that one at 9 p.m. over on the Purple channel. On top of that, I might also be trying to get some gameplay in between now and then. So that's at 9 p.m. That's in like 5 hours. So after this stream, I'm probably going to be live over there on the Twitchies and getting some games in if I can. That's up to the will of the LFG gods. So we'll see how that one goes. Crossing my fingers though. So lots of streaming going on. We also have games scheduled on Thursday and Saturday. So if you're looking for some Warhammer 40k content all week, we got you covered over in on the Twitchies. But anyway, thanks everyone for coming and hanging out and joining me on this holiday week. Hope everyone's got some good stuff scheduled for the holidays. And let's talk about some frickin' Necrons, dude. So I've gone through and I've pinpointed some of the undefeated or the X1 Necron lists from these larger events. So obviously we had two, I don't want to say major level. I think they were pushing major level. They were like super GT, I guess. The WTC Navideño Individual Ranqueado. I assume that's how that works. That just means a WTC singles ranked event. And then Rise of the Empire GT. These were almost 100 players, so not quite a major, but very large GTs. We also had the Grimdark Grand Tournament. That was 52 players, pretty large as well. Not a lot of events this weekend, but the ones that we did have were relatively big, which is nice to see, even as close as we are to the end of the year. And we saw some Necron lists from those. A lot of X and 1s, only one undefeated, obviously. But let's get talking about those. My music's a little loud here, chat. Let me turn it down. I don't know why it's so loud. Maybe I have my desktop audio up. Anyone notice that Night Scythes can now arrive turn 1 from strategic reserves? There is no rule saying it cannot be set up on the table, and it does not have deep strike. The Night Scythe can arrive turn 1 from strategic reserves. Is that the case? So there is a little bit of confusion. I haven't delved into this super highly, because, well, first of all, strategic reservers never, if they redeploy, they never come in turn 1 because of the WCW FAQ. Assuming that you're using that, there are some stuff. I think the other thing is like the Deceiver's redeploy, put stuff into strategic reserve. If you're not in reserve in battle formation step, if you're not in reserve in battle formation step, there's a potential you can arrive turn 1. But I think the intention is that you can't. Does the Night Scythe have a special arrival mechanic? Let's see. We can take a look at the Night Scythe here. We're on. Our old friend Wahapedi is back, by the way. We can't use index data sheets anymore, so that's sad. It can be set up in the reinforcement step of your first, second, or third movement phase. Yeah. I mean, that's just what it says on the 10. Yeah, there you go. Ta-da! The downside is if you're using WCW FAQ and common sense, you cannot disembark its transported units when it sets up. So it can set up and then essentially, this model would be very bad as a transport because it's not hovering, right? It doesn't have the hover ability. And I'm glad they did this, because this is Games Workshop's finally learning from their past mistakes. Because in 9th edition, this thing would have released and said, it's an aircraft, you have to put it in strategic reserve, and then once it sets up, you can't disembark its units, so get fucked. So the units embarked cannot disembark until round 3. That's basically like how bombers work right now, where like a bomber unit has to start in strategic reserve and can't resolve their bombs when they come on, so they have to wait until round 3 to disembark their bombs. But this one, you slam it down your first movement phase, can't disembark, but then it can move anywhere on the table because it's infinite movement, because it's an aircraft, and then can move and disembark the next turn. So it's just shooting its gun round 1, right? But it's not really doing that much. Then if it survives, obviously it's going to be able to jump in and blow some people up, which is cool. Now, obviously the surviving part is a little tough. It's a T9 vehicle, the 3+ save. I mean, that's reasonably survivable, especially because it can be in the back edge of your table. But it's probably not hiding anywhere, so long-range guns can get line of sight to it, which means it might attract a lot of fire. So, I don't know. You win some, you lose some. So that is cool, though. I appreciate that mechanic exists so that the unit isn't, like, worthless. That's very cool. All right. Let's talk about some frickin' lists, chat. So, Inaki Arieta from the Navideño event is running a Hypercrypt Legion with Transcendent Catons. All right. So I played this list yesterday. Not this one, but a similar version. It was all Catan shards, so a little bit of a spoiler alert for maybe the next meme build video. We'll see how that list does. The first game, the test game with it was very good, but I think it was a really good matchup for me. But it is kind of a skew. But the Catan shards are absolutely nuts. They got for free a 5-up Feel No Pain, plus they retain their half damage. So they're 4+ on half damage, 5-up Feel No Pain. So they once you successfully wound them, they cut your damage by, if you're a multi-damage weapon, by 50% due to an invuln save, 50% due to a damage halve, and then an extra 30% due to their Feel No Pain, or 33%. So they cut your damage down by 88%. Does that sound right? No, 83%? That sounds about right, something like that. Go from 50% thanks to the invuln, 25 thanks to the damage half, and then 8% of that goes away thanks to the Feel No Pain. So if you have a 10 damage weapon, right, you're expecting like 2 to 3 damage to go through. Kind of nutty on average, to be fair, on average. That's the survivability is crazy. Their damage output is also good, but the downside of the Catan shards is that they tend to be outside of specifically the Nightbringer. The Nightbringer has very good output, so and that's why we're seeing this guy here. Obviously, he's got a strength 14, d6+2, devastating weapon in melee. That's solid. The downside is that they don't have any rerolls unless you're rocking Silent King, or you're doing some chicanery. But that's probably fine, honestly, right? Like it's okay. His gun's okay, but it's a little inconsistent too. It's big damage, but kind of D3 shots, mid. It's good strength, but mid AP. Probably gets saved. But then it also eats mortal wounds in the beginning of the fight phase, which is also cool. So the Nightbringer does serious damage. The Void Dragon is a shooting platform, I found. He does good damage against vehicles in melee because he's anti-vehicle too. But his weapon is not quite as impressive as the Nightbringer. It's less attacks, less strength, less AP. But the upside is that he has 2 ranged attacks. One of them is a d6+2 anti-vehicle weapon. The other one is this huge blast. It's a blast sustain 2, so it's a Tesla blast that AP 1/2 damage. So it's extremely good against light and medium infantry. So this guy will just blast. He'll kill like 8 models on a shot pretty consistently, which is kind of crazy. It's a little dicey, but if you roll decent with it. So that's also super cool. And then 2 Transcendent Catan as well to follow that up. The big benefit of the Hypercrypt Legion is that we can put those guys into strategic reserve every single turn. You can take a look at the Hypercrypt Legion thing here. So this is a bit of a weird rule, and I have a sneaking suspicion a lot of people are going to get this rule wrong, because you look at it and you go, it's a teleport assault from Grey Knights. At the end of my opponent's turn, I select a number of units and I deep strike them. No, you don't deep strike them. You put them into strategic reserves. So They have to come in off the table edge, which makes it a lot less consistent and a lot less useful than the Grey Knight's army ability to teleport around. To be fair, though, I think that's okay. Given that this is a detachment rule, not an army rule, it's not going to be quite as impactful. And I think if you could deep strike everything, that would be a little silly. Being able to bring them off the side is cool, and there's also, if you use if you use the stratagem to come in 3 inches away from people, which is called Cosmic Precision. It's when you arrive using Deep Strike or using Hyperphasing, which is weird wording. In my opinion, I think what happened to this rule is that they copy-pasted the Teleport Assault rule and called it Hyperphasing, and then changed it later in the thing to be Strategic Reserves, because you don't arrive from Hyperphasing, you arrive from Strategic Reserves. But obviously the intention is that it's a Strategic Reserve that you were placed into thanks to the Hyperphasing ability, I guess, is what it's referring to. That lets you set up anywhere on the battlefield 3 inches away from enemy models. So, to my knowledge, as far as I know here, that overrides the Strategic Reserve restrictions that you have to set up in particular areas of the battlefield. And I believe that that is the case, unless there's a commentary on it, which I don't know if there is, but I would not be too surprised to find out. I know that like Omni Scramblers will override it, but I don't believe that your core restrictions will do so. Yeah, I can't find anything in the commentary that would stop that from happening. Maybe the rule priority thing does? I'm actually not sure about that. That's worth considering. Well, we're getting so tactical, chat. It's great. It's great Catan for sure. Yeah, because it's Grey Knights. Yeah, that's a good call out for sure. This strat's 1 CP, chat. It's not 2 CP. It's just 1. So I'm actually not 100% sure that it overrides the Strategic Reserve restrictions. Now that I'm talking about it on stream, the reason is the reinforcement priority rule. Because the Strategic Reserves say that they must be placed in the table edge. Oh my god, I can't believe I should have looked this up beforehand, and I wasn't really thinking about it, to be honest. But it's important to play the roles correctly. I think that it's okay because I don't think the Strategic Reserve rules is a limitation on where you can set up. It's just a permission to set up. It's permissive rather than restrictive, and this only affects restrictive rules is what it kind of looks like to me. But I'm not 100% sure. Let's just look up the Strategic Reserve rules, and then we'll get off this topic. They are set up only within 6 inches of the battlefield edge. No model can be set up in the enemy deployment zone. All right, so I think you can go anywhere not in your opponent's deployment zone on round 2 is what it looks like to me. I think is how that works. You can do it if you shout louder than your opponent. So I think that this overrides the 6 inches off the table edge, but I don't think it overrides the enemy deployment zone restriction. Is what it looks like to me. But if anybody has any opinions on that, then let me know. But anyway, still it lets you come in 3 inches away from enemies, which definitely lets the Catan use their kind of short-range guns very well, because they're largely 12 inches range on a lot of their ranged attacks, which certainly helps. It also helps you take objectives away from people. The other benefit is that when you're in Strategic Reserve, anything with Deep Strike can come in as a Deep Striker. So the Transcendence can come in. The Transcendents can come in anywhere. They don't have to go off the table edge when they go uppy downy. They also obviously get their own teleportation ability, but that definitely helps them reposition more frequently. We then also have a bunch of Locust Heavy Destroyers, a Canoptek race. We have a Technomancer. The Osteoclave Fulcrum gives his unit Deep Strike, so whatever he's attached into, which it looks like is the Canoptek Wraith unit. So we have a Wraith unit that can uppy downy all over the place. These guys are incredibly difficult to kill. We talked about them on the video on Monday. They are 4 wounds, the 3+ save, 4+ invulnerable save, and then the Technomancer gives them a 5+ feel no pain. So for 300 points, you get this unit of 24 4-up, 5-up feel no pain wounds that are just bouncing around the table. And when you're in reserve, you can pay a CP. They have a stratagem to it's this one, Reanimation Crypts, to heal themselves when they're in reserve. Now, to be fair, and this is another thing, this detachment's super weird, and I want to make sure that people aren't getting the mechanics wrong. You can't reanimate models when you're in reserve. Reanimation Protocol specifically activates while you're on the battlefield. So first of all, when you're in reserve, you don't get your reanimation protocols. The stratagem allows you to, but because your unit's not in coherency, there's no legal place to put new models in the unit. So new models are not added back, but if you're taking damage, and again, they're 4 wounds apiece, so if you're healing 3 wounds on that unit, that's actually kind of a lot of resilience you're getting back on them. You can regenerate them. It also works for the Catan very well, because the Catan they live or die based on their reanimation, essentially. Because every single one of those wounds that they get back is like, it's like 8 wounds on most other units in the game. So it's huge on all of the Catan shards. So this stratagem is super, super relevant for them. The other fun thing about that, about the detachment ability, is that you go into strategic reserve, but it's not required when you return. So what you can potentially do is, if you're out of position with these slow guys, and all the Catan shards are movement 6 now, is you can go into reserve and then hold them past your next turn and then rapid ingress them your opponent's next round phase. So you take a battle round off, but you still have the opportunity to come in out of rapid ingress and then actually get into melee the following turn with them. So you can potentially like go second, uppy downy the Nightbringer, hold them for battle round 2, and then drop them end of your opponent's movement phase battle round 3, and that's super good. Because they start on the table, they're actually also not restricted by the battle round 3 cap that kills all your reserves, because they are reinforcements but not reserves, because that cap only applies to things that began the game in strategic reserve. So you're able to set them up later than the normal cap as well, which is a big benefit. Then we just have a bunch of little units. 2 units of 5 Lich Guard is interesting. I wonder if they're just going to be little resilient guys to stand on backline objectives, and again they can uppy downy and do actions and stuff and be kind of difficult to kill. Tomb Blades are super good as scouts. One big thing that the detachment can have trouble with is screening units. So having scouts to push back those screens and potentially just kill them is super duper useful. If your opponent has 5 like 1 wounded, Nimrods in the middle of the table, you can just kill them with the Tomb Blades or use them for actions and stuff like that. So I think this list is strong. It's a little, as we've been talking about with all these bizarre reserve mechanics and the weird restrictions on them, it's a little, I want to say like inconsistent, just because of how weird it is. You effectively have like multiple states of reserve for your army. You have like standard strategic reserve, standard reserve, hypercrypt strategic reserve, hypercrypt deep strike, and then you have to keep track of all 4 of those, the differences between them, what abilities do and do not work on them while they're in one of those 4 varieties of reserve, and then when they can come in, and then you obviously using that effectively too, it's a lot in Hypercrypt Legion. So it's definitely, I think, like the classiest of the Necron detachments. It's very cool, and I think good players are going to use it extremely well, but it's also super duper bizarre. Super weird. Canoptek still the best? 100%. Yeah, Canoptek I think is the best. I think Hypercrypt Legion is a close second, though. For sure. How common are stressor abilities that allow your opponent to cancel or deny reserves? I think that 9th edition mostly got rid of abilities that prevent reserves from standing. Oh, that's not entirely true. There are several abilities in the game that prevent reserves units from setting up entirely. It is very rare. Tyranids have one, and I want to say Astra Militarum have one, but that might be a 9th edition thing that I'm remembering. Those are extremely rare. Things that restrict enemy setup positions are relatively common. So Space Marines always have them. Infiltrators are incredibly good in Space Marine lists. Adeptus Mechanicus have one. Genestealer Cults have one. There are I think there's a Tyranid Relic that does it. And then there are some other examples as well. Sometimes it's individual characters. Oftentimes characters will have a deep strike restriction zone, and then you have to keep track of that separately from the unit. So there are a lot of those. Those typically say that you can't set up reinforcements within 12. So yeah, that's those are the things you typically got to worry about. That rapid ingress is a good solution for that. There are, like, some of these guys' guns have a longer range than 12, so if you're not a lone operative, they can jump in and just shoot you, which is fine. But it is a downside for the list, and I do think including guns, so like including these Locust Heavy Destroyers, is important. And I do think that the ranged weapons in this detachment, I think, is kind of the truth, honestly, because one downside of Necron ranged weapons is that they tend to be kind of like stodgy. They're a little slow, and that can make it so that they. Let me fix my screen here. It's a little small. Let's zoom that baby in. There you go. And that can make it so that it's kind of easy to like kite their line of sight. Where if you're like, oh, I don't want to get shot by these Locust Heavy Destroyers. Well, they like move 7, not going through walls, so it's easy to prevent that. And the biggest benefit of the Hypercrypt Legion is if your opponent's like, I'm hiding from your Locust Heavy Destroyers. I'm gonna cut the line of sight. I'm gonna make sure that they can't move and shoot me. And you're just like, all right, we'll just hyperphase them, and they'll just like pop, 20 inches closer to you and shoot you. And I think that's super strong. I think like Doomsday Arcs are a not terrible include in this attachment. I think Locust Destroyers are really good. I think there's a we'll see if some of the other lists include this combo. The Arisen Tyrant enhancement gives you full hit rerolls if you set up this turn. So you can put that on like a Locust Destroyer Lord, and you can put it into a unit of heavy destroyers. Or regular destroyers. Regular destroyers have rerolls against enemies on objectives anyway, so like 70% of the time you're already getting them, so like you're paying 25 points to not really get too much. But heavy destroyers don't have hit rerolls baked in; they have wound rerolls. And if you take like Adminic Annihilators, they can pop up, whatever it is, 18 inches away from you, shoot 12 times a model with critical 5s and sustained 1 and reroll 1s to wound. So it's like it's an expensive unit, 350 points I think. Or 250 points, I should say. But it's so jumpy, and it just deletes basically any infantry unit that it sees. So there's some really interesting range combos in this detachment, and I think that's sort of the future of the detachment. The deploy or the Transcendent, the Catan stuff is cool, I think, and it definitely is the biggest help for Catan because most of the other detachments don't have like actual synergy with them. They're just taking them for their power alone, but I think there are other ways to build this detachment as well. It's 230 points, is it? How much is a Locust Lord? I thought they were like 80 points by themselves. They're 80, yeah. So it's 255, I think, right? Which is it's a little expensive. It's the most expensive enhancement in the detachment, but full rerolls is pretty good. Plus, it gives him and melee is like a 2+ weapon skill, rerolling 1s to hit because it affects all your attacks, not just his your ranged attacks. So there's like a lot of It just helps him a little bit as well. So that can move us on to Rise of an Empire. Now, Colin McDade is the Necron player that I talked about in my video yesterday, who ended up going 6-0 with his Canoptek core list. We could take a quick look at the list. It's basically, I mean, I already talked about it at length, but we can take a little bit of a refresher. There's a Void Dragon, Nightbringer, 1 single Transcendent Catan, and then a Hex Mark for actions, 3 Technomancers, and 3 units of Canoptek Wraiths, some Flayed Ones to screen out forward deploys, Tomb Blades for utility, and a Locust Destroyer because they're great. And so basically it's like kind of the Canoptek Wraith show. The Canoptek Wraiths are like they're like the meat and potatoes of the army. They're doing all the work basically. They can clear infantry pretty well, at least medium infantry. I believe they're AP 2 damage, which is like fine. They're not going to blow up a tank unless it's, you know, maybe it'll kill a Rhino. But they're not blowing up Land Raiders or anything. Oh, excuse me, AP 1 2 damage. But they will kill a bunch of Space Marines for sure, which is fairly useful. And then they're super hard to get a hold of. So the benefits of the Canoptek Court are it's ridiculous. It has a very good detachment rule. It's largely full hit rerolls. Your Cryptek and Canoptek units always get hit rerolls of 1. If you control half the objective markers in your zone, or you're in your own deployment zone, then you gain full hit rerolls, which is insane. But then the benefit is the stratagems. You get a 6-inch reactive move on your Canoptek unit, so on the Wraiths, and then you also get a lone operative effect. So these guys can just be chilling in the middle of the table, standing on an objective. They're, again, super tough to kill. Most units aren't going to one-shot them in melee unless you're like Chaos Space Marines or something. And even then, it might get a little tough. And you can't even shoot them effectively as well. And if you shoot them and then try to go in, they also have a reactive reanimation on your charge, which is kind of cool too. As you charge them, they could potentially be regenerating wounds to make your hits kill your kill harder. So yeah, the stratagems available to them are super duper good. Now, the one thing that we don't see is a combo with the Cynosure of Eradication, and that is one thing that you can see in this detachment that's super powerful. Because all of your Cryptek units gain the effects, not only are targetable by the stratagem, but also gain the effects of the power matrix. That means that that's usable at any unit that has a Cryptek joined into it, which means you can do something like put a Plasmancer into a unit of warriors or immortals, and then use this stratagem on them potentially for free because it's a battle tactic with an Overlord. Immortals, I think, they're the number 1 place for this, and they even get a movement increase if you take the new teleport Overlord, the Temporal Shroud, I think. Overlord. So they can advance 6 inches. They can shoot Tesla weapons with hit rerolls, thanks to the power matrix. If they have a Cryptek. The Plasmancer makes them critical on 5s, so they get their sustain 2. And then if they're shooting at a target on an objective, they roll all their wound rolls, and that mostly just converts into devastating wounds. So the damage from that unit alone is absolutely crazy. And that's another potential combo that you can build into this. It does take 2 characters and a relatively expensive unit of guys, but that is another direction that the detachment can go in. So here's another one. This is another Canoptek Court. This is from Warren Lauderdale, who is playing a Translocation Shroud. Excuse me, that's the name of the upgrade. That's pretty good. Necron characters wildly overcosted. Yeah, they also. We'll go on like a marginal rant here for a second, because like Necron characters also. I guess there's some sort of like thematic restriction to their weapon profiles, but maybe they're like, I don't know, their robot body is hard to maneuver in, and so they're kind of slow and clunky. But it means that all of their weapon profiles are terrible, and it's never made sense to me, because like they make these cool models, like these big War Scythe Lords and like these Lord Blade models that have like these crazy melee weapons. And I think maybe outside of the Scorpek Lord, what is a Scorpek Lord's output now? He had like Thunder Hammers for arms in 9th edition, but Scorpex are kind of like under pushed in this edition, so I don't even know what their melee attack looks like. Every single one of them is like 3 or 4 attacks, like mid strength, mid AP 2 damage. And you're like, what is that? That's not even a regular Space Marine captain. Like that's 20 points less expensive than they are. It's kind of crazy how underpowered the Necron melee stats are. And I mean, it's the case for all models in, or like all units in 40k right now, but it's extra the case for Necrons. Like melee stats are underpowered right now, but like a Space Marine captain gets up to like 8 power fist attacks with devastating wounds. Necron Lord is like 4, maybe 4, like kind of Thunderhammer equivalents if he takes the blade. Scorpec Lord is 4 3 damage attacks. I mean, that's fine, I guess. Oh, and he does a bunch of mortal wounds. That's okay. So, like, he's maybe the only exciting melee guy. Like, Oracan's good once per game because he does his supercharge, right? Triple attacks and strength, and you automatically critical wound with devastating, so he pushes through saves. Like, that's pretty good. Imhotep's, like, kind of underpowered, right? He has 4 attacks, strength 3, AP 3, 2 damage. Like, this is what I'm talking about. Like, what is this? This is like your faction leader. Even, like, honestly... So I was building a list to try to put the Silent King into it because I was like, oh, that's cool. I like him. If I was gonna play Catan Shards, then I'll rerolls, and he does give a reroll aura, so like that's sweet. In melee, he's got 12 attacks. That's a lot of attacks with lethal, which is fine, but it's only strength 8. Like strength 8, 2 damage, which is like that's a good melee profile. Don't get me wrong, right? 12 attacks, strength 8, AP 3, 2 damage. It's a power fist plus. But he's 420 points. What are you talking about? You could get like 6 Space Marine captains for this amount, and those guys have like 60 attacks. Like, or whatever, 30, 8 times 6? 48 attacks? Like, what is this? What are we doing here? And I guess like he gives himself rerolls, which is okay, or he can give himself +1 strength. But like, whatever, dude. I guess you could tank shock with him. Like, that's kind of fun. But it's only a strength 8 tank shock, so most of the time it's gonna only do 2 or 3 mortals and cost you a CP. Like that's a far cry from last edition's Silent King, where like he had a bunch of different attacks. He had a billion little attacks. He also had like a bunch of big 3 damage attacks, and then like a pretty good decent amount of 2 damage attacks as well. But not anymore. No longer. Now he's just a weird power fist. So I don't know, man. It's just strange. I don't understand the predilection to like make the lores really not good at fighting. And it's not like they have good melee enhancements too. Their melee enhancements are probably, on the whole, if we're like looking collectively at 40k, I think the melee focused enhancements for Necrons tend to be some of the worst. And that's just perennial. That's just always how they've been. Where they have like, oh, you can buff yourself in melee, but it's like there's one of them that's like anti-character 4 up. You're like, what? That's what you're going to give me? Anti-character 4? Which I guess is good, because most stuff has characters and a lot of your weapons have devastating, but, like, it's, like, so inconsistent. Like, where's my, like, +2 attacks, +2 strength? Like, I don't know. They're gone. It's crazy. Anyway, that's a rant over. We'll go back to talking about Necron stuff. I have issues with Necron design, but that's not a part of it. That's a part that I don't like. I want Necron Lords to use their cool scythes in an interesting and fun way. Plasmancer is good because he has tiny grenades. Yeah, I like the Plasmancers. I almost wonder if there's like a universe where you take like a couple Plasmancers. One of the versions of Hypercrypt Legion I was building actually had, I think, 3 Plasmancers in it because they're 55 points and they on average do 2 mortal wounds to something within 18. So it's like you just like uppy downy them like off a side and then they just like nuke something for 6 mortals. But you have to follow it up with something and then they just die. So like they're not that hard to kill. They don't even have an invuln save, so they just explode. But yeah, anyway. I like them. They're cool. Oh yeah, I can't forget about those strength 4 armored bulk attacks. Let's go. I like the mental image of the minions attacking someone where they just like they bump into you. Boop, boop, boop. They boop you. So anyway, back to Warren's list over here. we're in, right? Is that Daniel? Yeah, we're in Lauderdale. We do have Imhotep the Stormlord, so he's there to regenerate some command points. So again, we can use all those crazy strats. I think this is, and I think that we are comboing out like we talked about. The strats are so powerful, but you do run out of CP because Imhotep is like the only CP generator that you have besides the Overlord's free strat. So this is the way to get yourself a bunch of them. We have the Translocation Overlord. So he can push the unit. An additional 6 inches when they advance. With his Translocation strat, and you can move horizontally through models and terrain features, which is kind of cute. Most of the time, that doesn't make a huge difference, but that's kind of sweet. And then we're going to be comboing that out with the unit of Immortals. So the Immortals have Tesla Carbine, so they can advance and shoot. So they're moving 11 with the Translocation strat advance, and then able to fire without penalty. They're shooting 2 attacks apiece to sustain 2. And then you are full hit rerolling, assuming that you're stealing the 2 of the 3 midboard objectives. If you shoot somebody on an objective, you get full wound rerolls. So this is, I think there's going to be already, it's kind of fallen out of favor a little bit because a lot of the anti-objective mechanics in the game got super nerfed in their updates. So like Gene Stealers used to reroll everything on objectives. Thousand Suns, Rubric Marine units always reroll on enemies that are holding objectives. So when Thousand Suns were strong at the beginning of the edition, I think people were very quickly learning that if they did not expect to hold an objective by the beginning of their next turn, there's no reason to touch it because you will just die. You'll lose the objective and the unit holding it. And I assume that we're going to start to see that technology sort of brought back in. So the big thing you have to keep in mind against this attachment is that you don't hold objectives if unless A, you know that the Immortals can't get to you, or B, you're okay with losing whatever's on the objective, because the Immortals would probably just kill you with full rerolls. So it's 20 shot, full rerolls, critical 5s with sustain 2. So you probably get like 6 criticals, call it 7, and then reroll into 4 more. So you get like 11 criticals, which turns into 33 hits, and then you probably like you're probably hitting 40-ish times thanks to the regular attacks as well, the regular hits as well. And then full rerolling, looking for 6s on your target is, you're probably getting 7 and then rerolling again and getting like 5 more or something. So you're good for like 12 devastating damage from that whole combo thanks to the free stratagem from the Overlord. So that's a lot. That's a lot of damage, as they say. Plus, you also get a little bit of damage from the Plasmancers, as we just talked about, and you might get a couple failed saves in there as well. We're also rocking Canoptek Doomstalkers. That's interesting. So 135 points for these guys. They get you a pretty solid ranged profile. So they have a little baby Doomsday Cannon. They can get heavy, so they could potentially be hitting on 3s, but most of the time you're probably going to be hitting on 4s. But the big benefit here is that they're Canoptek, so that they benefit from the Power Matrix reroll. So they're normally crappy ballistic skills circumvented by that. And then they can fire Overwatch on 5s. They don't do it for free, but if you are triggering the Power Matrix, because it checks every phase, it's highly unlikely that your opponent has disrupted your Power Matrix control in their own movement phase, which means that you are likely benefiting, and if you're in your own deployment zone, you get it anyway, which means that you're likely benefiting from full rerolls in your opponent's turn. So you're firing D6 plus 1 shots, hitting on 5s with rerolls, which is pretty reasonable if your opponent has something that's worth overwatching. These guys have a really good profile against heavy infantry, so like aggressors or terminators is kind of where they want to be shooting, because they're base 3 damage, so they'll one-shot 3 wound infantry, and they're AP 3, so they punch through a lot of 3+ armor saves and probably put terminators on their invuln. So it's just kind of like a generically good profile, honestly, but only if you're benefiting from the Power Matrix. Otherwise, they're too swiggy with the 4+ ballistic skill. And then they have the one little twin Gauss flare. I love this. Rapid fire 1, twin linked, 1 strength 4, maybe 2. Pew pew. Pew 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 pew. They put it on the model, so they gotta put it on the data sheet too. Even though it's probably mostly a waste of time. Maybe you'll kill one guy with it. We did actually bring a Reanimator. So the Reanimator's got nerfed down to a 3+ or a 3-inch aura. So I wonder if they're just going to be sort of following the Doomstalkers around and just making a little bit of a brick, which is kind of cute. I like that. They can also, they could maybe follow the Canoptek race around too. Plus 2 units of flayed ones for forward operation, Locust Heavy Destroyers for just doing Locust Heavy Destroyer stuff, and a unit of Tomb Blades. So pretty cool. Interesting. We'd only have one Overlord, so I guess Immortal is joining the second Immortal unit. So they're going to be probably following up. We have one that goes fast, and the other one just like kills whatever killed the first one, probably. Because I think most of the time the play pattern is going to be that this unit jumps out, combos out, shoots something to death, and then gets murdered. And you're hoping the second unit can kind of close the game for them. But that's a pretty good gameplay. And I think, especially if you're trying to deal with... I think the real benefit is that you have to kill that unit, because if you let it shoot twice, you probably lose. You've probably taken too much damage. But you also have to kill it while dealing with 12 Canoptek raids with 4 wounds and a 5+ field note bane, which is not easy. It's a lot of beef to get through. So a lot of the weapon profiles that are good against Immortals are also good against raids, or also going to be used against raids. So you are anticipating. So you have to pull focus from the race in order to kill that Immortal unit. So they work pretty well synergistically. Do I think there'll be a push for sticky objective units to claim and move off of? I don't think so. That's really the big benefit of those is like holding your backline objectives, because you have to hold an objective for a round. So unless the objectives are protected, in which case like you're already not being shot, you're probably going to lose control of it anyway if the Necron player really wants to stop you from taking it. Also the race are fast. Like if you leave objectives alone, the race will just like pop up and take it and then react and move away. The real powerful one are the stratagems that let you hold objectives when you die. I know World Eaters has one. I think there's another one that they added recently, and I can't remember which detachment has it. I think it's AdMech. Does AdMech have one in the Techno-Archaeologist detachment? I forget. But there is... Those ones are super good because you can throw chaff units on them and then retain control even if the Necrons kill you. And again, like that would force them to push raids and stuff forward in order to actually steal those. And you're bleeding resources from them. Those objectives are super strong. The other, I guess, sticky objective stratagems are also good, to be fair. So not necessarily units, but most of the stratagems that let you lock in objectives are usable in the opponent's command phase. So I know the Vanguard Spearhead does, and I know that the Demons one also does. The stratagems that say, in a command phase, if you control an objective, you can maintain control of it, even if you have no models on it. Those are super powerful. So those are also pretty useful, I think, for that reason too. I mean, the Reanimator nerf was probably too far, I think. Especially because I think that I don't know. I kind of feel like... I feel sort of seen by the design team with the Necron nerfs. I don't know if like somebody just sent them one of my rants about reanimation protocols, and they were just like, "Oh yeah, we should listen to this guy." For some reason, why would they think that? Insane. But they definitely felt like they nerfed reanimation protocols, 6 ways from Sunday, and I think to the point that they probably went too far. So the Canoptek Reanimator reanimates within 3. It used to reanimate within 12. Which was fucking nuts. But the problem is like 12 to 3, it's like 25% of its old aura, except that the actual effect is way worse because it's an aura, so it's a 2-dimensional measurement. It's not on a single axis. It's a 2-axis measurement, which means that you are reducing the total area of the table it affects by like an exponential amount. So I don't know what the math is because I don't know how to add numbers up. But the actual reduction in the size of the affected area is like probably like 90%, like 90 or 95%. Like it's crazy. And I think they could have gone to 6. The other thing that they changed that it's worth talking about, if we go back to our Overlord friend over here, is that resurrection orbs are they're a different effect. They've been totally reworked entirely. They let you reanimate D6 once per game, end of any phase, which is cool because you can do something like take a shot, prepare to take a charge, and resurrect before the charge happens, which I think is sick. Like, there are situations like that. Like, you can also, I guess, like, you have to use it in your opponent's turn because you can't resurrect more than one unit per turn. I guess, like, you can't resurrection orb with multiple. You can't use multiple resurrection orbs in that way, I guess, is the way it works. Which is a little bit weird, but I guess it is what it is. It's sort of like a Rites of Battle effect. But I believe that you can resurrect twice in your command phase. I don't believe that there's a restriction on that, but I don't know if that's entirely the case. Because you could just end of your command phase, your resurrection protocols trigger, and then you just also use your resurrection orb. So if you need to like push a unit super far, it's like you get like a 5-inch bubble that you can resurrect new models into. Oh, I guess you don't actually. I'm kind of like working through the mechanic in my head here. You have to resurrect in coherency of units at the start of the phase on the table. So you don't actually get extra distance from it, but it does let you potentially put additional OC on an objective to steal objectives before you score them, which is pretty cool. So there's like a lot of interesting. I think it's a more interesting mechanic than the old resurrection orb, which is just like resurrect twice per battle round, which was fucking nuts. And I'm glad that they changed it, but it is a big nerf because that got nerfed, and then also the reanimator got nerfed like hugely. And those are two big changes, so I don't know. It is what it is. This guy could have been a bit bigger aura. Anyway, just rambling a little bit there. The Res Orb limit is to prevent the Catacomb command bars from being useful because it resurrects as well. Yeah, that one has like because it doesn't lead a unit, right? It has like an unrestricted resurrection orb. One friendly infantry or mounted unit within 6 and resurrect. And yeah. I mean, that's still a decent ability. I wish that his resurrection orb was persistent and he was like a little reanimator, but only for infantry. I like the idea of the CCB. I feel like he's a little funky. I think he should have been like a bodyguarded lone op, like Gilliman. Like, while within 3 of a battle line unit or an infantry unit, he has lone operative. And then you don't have to deal with like all this quantum shielding stuff and getting him shot. And then if he had just had like an extra D3 reanimation protocols or something, I think that would be cool. Plus the OC buff. I like the OC buff, though. That's a cool effect. Anyway, wow, we went on a tangent. But yeah, this is a good example of a second variety of Canoptek Court. We also talked about some Hypercrypt Legion, and I think the real interesting question is what other detachments that we're going to start seeing. It's a 96% reduction. Oh, in the size of the reanimator bubble? Yep. That sounds about right. Oh, 94%. That sounds about right, yeah. Unironically, though, I almost took the Catacomb command bars in my Hypercrypt. Just so I could buff the OC on stupid Catan charts. By 1. So maybe it'll matter. The number of times that 2, because they're OC4 generally, besides the Deceiver, 2 OC2 like infantry come and take an objective from you. It's like, stop it. Get off. That's mine. But it's definitely not worth 150 points for that. All right. Let's go searching for some more Necron lists. There are some other ones. We have another X and 1 here from the Grimdark Grim tournament. This is Jonas Axelsson. Went 4-1. Another Hypercrypt Legion. We are back, and this one is Locust Destroyer focused. So this I love. Like I said at the beginning, I think that the Hypercrypt gun line is real, and I think that it's gonna shoot a bunch of people and catch them off guard. I love that this list is a list after my own heart. I love this. So it's like a huge focus on flayed ones, so that we have lots and lots of forward operators. So the flayed ones are... Oh, hi, Inky. What's up, my girl? Let's just put up their data sheet real quick here. The flayed ones are a pretty scary weapon profile. Hello. You want to come visit and say hi to chat? Come say hi to chat. No, not really. Okay. Their 4 attacks, twin-linked with sustain 1. So they're probably hitting on 2s. So you're getting like 3.4 hits on average per guy, plus their twin link. So they're very good at swooping infantry. Plus they infiltrate. So the whole goal here is to clear out enemy screens. Because the danger for Hypercrypt Legion, like we said before, is that they have all of these reserve mechanics, and they're all weird and different reserve mechanics. And if you can't kill a unit of infiltrators, especially like Phobos Librarian infiltrators that are in the middle of the table, you'll just lose. Your detachment doesn't do anything. So I love that we have like 2 little units of flayed ones that we can use to screen out enemy forward deploys, and then we can put a big unit of flayed ones right in the middle and get them to go punch people, stab them with their scissor hands. Then we have 2 units of Canoptek Wraiths. Those guys are joined by Technomancers. Plus, we have an Osteoclave Fulcrum to give a unit the Deep Strike. And then 2 units of Locust Destroyers. So with the Locust Lords, these guys have lethal, and then they get critical 5-ups with the Locust Lord, and they get rerolls against enemies on objectives. So like I said before, they don't necessarily need a Risen Tyrant in order to get rerolls, because most of the time they're going to be shooting somebody on an objective. And again, unless people start learning to not put their stuff on objectives, but that's sometimes hard to do because you want to get points, and sometimes you have to hold objectives for secondaries anyway, so you're not always going to be able to do that. The Locust Destroyers, the big benefit is that you can come in off weird angles that your opponent doesn't necessarily have line of sight to, and just start attritioning your opponent down. And then you have 3 Doomsday Arcs in the back. And then, like I said before, the Doomsday Arcs, they're not the fastest thing in the world, so you can a lot of times kind of like kite their line of sight, because most of the time they want to be standing still, and if they have to move, it's really unfortunate for them. But you get to uppy downy them into really relevant areas of the table in Hypercrypt Legion. So if your opponent is playing super cagey and trying to prevent the Doomsday Arcs from getting you, then they're just going to jump around. They're going to teleport around and find you. The other, I think it's a little bit of a sleeper benefit to the Doomsday Arcs too, is that Doomsday Arcs are fucking huge. They're so big. And while their movement is pretty good, their move 10, which is like solid, a lot of times they get stuck on stuff. Either like other Doomsday Arcs, or you got some infantry and they can't move around it, or there's like a wall and they have to like edge around the wall a bunch of times. And just being able to be like, no. They're just going to go to the other side of the table. They're going to come off a table edge like 25 inches away, and I'm not even going to deal with this fucking wall. That's good. That's super solid. So I think the Doomsday Arcs are like the sleeper for Hypercrypt Legion. I think that they're super strong. And I love this kind of gunline focus. I think this list is super cool. This was kind of originally where my mind went to when I saw an uppy-downy Necron list. I was like, ugh. Necron guns are so... Their profiles are so good, but the problem is delivery, and the detachment just lets you deliver them. At least Doomsday Arcs, I should say. The Locusts are okay. Heavy Destroyers are really scary, but you don't get as many of them. What's the current flayed one base size? That's a great question. What does Wikipedia say? They're generally right. Kitty, stop it. 28. I think that was the plastic re-release when they came out in 9th edition, when they transferred from resin. I guess we can also look it up in Games Workshop too, just in case. Welcome to Warhammer, everybody. Welcome to Warhammer. Yeah, they are. 32 Great British Pounds. Jesus Christ. 28.5. Oh, excuse me. 28.5 millimeters. That half a millimeter is going to be very impactful. That half a millimeter makes or breaks the unit, I think. Oh yeah, the backline DDA is pretty scary. They are restricted pretty heavily by the deployment zone arrival on round 2. But once you're unrestricted on round 3, then they can kind of go anywhere. And it's not that hard to fit a Doomsday Ark within 6 inches of the table. They just have to go at like a funny angle, which is usually fine because the unit's like 9 or 10 inches long, I think. So they don't fit perfectly perpendicular to the table edge. Oh, here she comes. Coming to visit? If I don't look at her, sometimes she'll jump on my lap. If I look at her, she gets self-conscious and she doesn't want to come over. You don't want to come over? No, okay. You just want pats? All right. In the 228 mil bases. Yeah, I wonder if there's like a good base expander. 25 to 28 is like a weird number because I don't know if like I don't know, like a 3mm base adaptation is tough. Oh, they do make them. You can get them on eBay. Look at that. A little 3D print. 25 to 28.5. That's easy. There you go. Good stuff. Good old FDM printers, man. What a time to be alive. Oh, you can get them even cheaper on... How many do you get in this pack for $10? It doesn't say... Oh, 30! Jesus Christ. Okay, yeah, no, that's pretty cost effective. Man, this guy's making bank, I bet. Way to go, J-Man. Appreciate you, J-Man2C. There you go. Free shout out. Didn't even have to pay for that. Yeah, we were just talking about the strat. The strat's super weird because I think that it... I don't believe it lets you deploy in your opponent's deployment zone because strategic reserves say you come in off a table edge but not within your opponent's deployment zone. And rules that prevent you from setting up reserves override rules that allow you to set up reserves. So I think that the deployment zone restriction on round 2 specifically is still in place for the strategic reserver. There's probably an argument to be made that you still have to go 6 inches from a battlefield edge, but it's tougher because it doesn't say you cannot set up not within 6 inches of a battlefield edge, which I think is what it would have to say in order for it to be a restrictive rule, but I don't know. It's poorly thought out. I don't think the Hypercrypt Legion... I don't think the Hypercrypt Legion ability was thought out very well. That stratagem, or specifically that stratagem's super jank. Because it also... I don't know. It doesn't say it works on strategic reservers. It says it works on hyperphasers, which is weird. Yoni Kajunkoski went 2-2-1, or 2-1-2. That's a weird result. But 2 10s and 2 20s. Dude, whoa. What is that? Yoni, what are you doing, my guy? This is a Canoptek court. Oh, this is almost identical to the list we just looked at. So that's not too exciting. It's the double... It's 2 Overlords for Translocation plus Immotech, so it's a little bit more in on the Translocation thing, and then triple... It's only double Doomstalkers, but we got triple Race instead with Technomancers, so it's a little bit of a side grade. It's more melee and infantry focused. And then we also saw a 3 and 2 from Paolo Ruggio. And this is another Hypercrypt. Ooh, this one is a little spicy. So this is something that I think that Necron Warriors got probably hit hard enough thanks to all the reanimation changes that you're less likely to see them. Inky's pouting right now, by the way, because I won't pay attention to her. She throws little temper tantrums, and she literally walks into a corner and she stares at the wall. Oh, and then she looks back at me to make sure I can see her. Yeah, I see you, you little scalawag. Trying to guilt trip me into playing with you. Get out of here. I'm working. So yeah, I think that the Necron Warrior bricks got hit probably hard enough, but the benefit is that you get a 20-man unit that you can Cosmic Precision into opponents' objectives. So if they haven't 3-inch screened out their objectives, you can drop massive amounts of OC onto them and just like nuke their primary for a turn. If they haven't like screened super well too, you can like Octopus Snake them and put 20 warriors plus a bunch of attached models just everywhere. Ooh, we also have a Monolith as well, dude. That's sick. A Monolith and 2 units of Immortals. Now, plus 10 Lichguard. Whoa, we are all in on the infantry today. That's super cool. So we have the Shard of the Nightbringer, the Hexmark Destroyer. The Destroyer's got Deep Strike, by the way, so he interfaces very well with the Hypercrypt hyperphasing, because he can go up into Strategic Reserve and then come in via Deep Strike the next turn. Imhotep the Stormlord for CP, Orc and the Diviner, a Plasmancer with Arisen Tyrant, so he's going to grant you 5 up criticals. Could probably put him on one of the Immortal units, I guess. And then they also get rerolls to hit. So he's coming back in with 5+ criticals and full rerolls, which is super strong, to trigger either sustained or lethal, depending on which Immortal unit he's in. And that might be a little bit of flexibility too. Like if you need the armor cracking, you can put them onto the Immortals, which are higher AP, versus the lower AP Tesla, which is much better at just pushing saving throws onto light infantry. Plus we have a Royal Warden with the Deep Strike, and then the big Necron Warrior unit. We also could just put them on the Necron Warriors too, obviously, which is 40 shots, I guess. But you don't get wound rerolls, which is a little sad. Death Marks also base Deep Strike, so they can also be used to uppy downy for deep striking actions and stuff. Big Locust of Heavy Destroyer, a big unit of Heavy Destroyers, excuse me, plus a Lichguard unit. Now, who's in the Lichguard unit? I guess, are they War Scythe Lichguard? They are. So we're putting Orc and the Diviner into the Lichguard unit. We don't have any Lords, or we're probably, maybe we're putting Imhotep in there? I don't know. And then they can come out of the Monolith, and there's a stratagem. This is kind of like the intended use case of the detachment is, Canoptek Court today, is to drop in, hyperphase in the Monolith, which I think gets you around a lot of the real downsides of the Monolith, which is just, it's like kind of really stodgy movement. It's like slow. It flies, but it doesn't mean anything because it's super slow. So it can't get around models. It can't get over terrain. It just kind of sucks at moving. But you can jump it around, and because it deep strikes, it can then deep strike once you hyperphase it. And you can even potentially Cosmic Precision the Monolith, because it's deep striking, to jump anywhere on the table. And then you use Dimensional Corridor for 2, which is expensive. But it is a strategic deploy, so I guess there's no way that we can what's the word? Free strat it. So it is expensive, but that means we get the Lichguard in after they come in out of the Eternity Gate, and the Monolith itself, I think you can pick them up on the battlefield. Ooh, that's loud. Hey. Ryan G, thank you for the...
That's called Blair Witching.
Blair Witching when she stares at the wall. Yeah, that makes total sense. She just has to like turn around really quickly and then do that super jerky run right at me. Try to scare me into submission. Blair Witching. You hear that, Kitty? You're a witch. Chat called you a witch. Orkin can't go with the Lichguard? Ooh. Well, that might be a mistake then. I mean, I guess he goes with the Warriors then, right? Yeah, I guess he would just go with the Warriors if that's the case. Is that really true? That's nuts. Pinky, stop it. Oh yeah. Immortals or Necron Warriors for Orc and the Diviner. Oh, that sucks. I'm sorry, Lichguard. Well, that's too bad. You previously used to put him in there because they lost their invulnerable save if they took the War Scythe because they didn't have the shield. But I guess you can't do that anymore, so that's fair. Good call out, chat. So I guess we are literally just putting... we might just be having them just alone, and if that's the case, I think. Because I think you could put the Warden in there, but I don't know if the Warden's like super useful to that unit. He just lets you fall back and shoot and unbattle shock yourself. That's probably better for the ranged units. And then, like, I guess you could put Immortal, but then you're putting your CP battery into danger. Although it can let him like get up in your opponent's grill and then use his like mortal wound bubble, but he's not like that exciting of an attachment. Although he turns on their -1 to wound, right? Because the Lich Guard have to be led in order for their transhuman thing to turn on. Is that right? Is that still the case? Yeah, so I guess you probably just put Emotech in there. Yeah, I think that's the case. But then the big benefit of the monolith is that you can because you can pull a unit from the battlefield and then reset them up with the Eternity Gate. You actually don't need to uppy downy the Lich Guard unit. So if you have Immotech in the unit, they can start in the back of your deployment zone. And the benefit there is that Immotech will continuously generate UCP because he has to be on the battlefield in order to gain you command points. So as soon as he uppy downies, then you lose a command point essentially the next turn. So the benefit is that you can keep him on the table and then port him in. They just they briefly enter reserve when they set back up, but then they immediately arrive from reserve, so it doesn't really matter so much. But then you're looking for a 6-inch charge, which is pretty sweet, with a bunch of devastating wounds, guys. So that's cool. I love that. I love that for them. To be fair, chat, that's how the transhuman always should have worked. I will die on that hill. The perma -1 to hit on like a T5 unit with like a billion defensive buffs. I guess like it doesn't feel quite as bad if they don't have feel no pains and crypto thralls, but the problem was that like 90% of the game was winning them on like 5s or 6s, which was like super shitty. It should probably always have worked this way. It's just unfortunate that they lost the other attachments, which I think is probably too big of a hit. I'll agree with that. I will concede that, but that's always how the transhuman should have worked. It was weird that they had like Terminator bodyguards had the bad transhuman, but Lich Guard had the good transhuman. And you're just like, why? They're unironically harder to kill than Terminators. It was weird. The -1 to wound thing, if you're like T4 or T5 or T3, that's fine. But as soon as you're T5 plus, I think it should be more contingent. I don't believe that Marnius Calgar gives command points in reserves. We can double check, but I'm fairly confident he doesn't. At least every time I've put him in reserve, I haven't given myself command points. So if I've been misplaying that, then oops. If he is on the battlefield, chat. Yeah, I believe that all of the command point generators always work on the battlefield. I don't believe anyone gets you command points while they're off the battlefield. You can check like Lord Solar, I guess. But I think that that's just the standard template. If he's on the battlefield. Yep. Yeah, they all require you to be on the battlefield for sure. I guess the weird part for here's what I'll say, chat. I don't think that the -1 to wound thing should ever have been permanently applicable, but I do think they should probably have a 2+ save. It's weird that they don't. Like, at least with the shield, right? Like, come on. It's got a big storm shield. Why isn't he a 2+ save? Anyway, let's move on. We can take a look. So those are the lists from the biggest events. All the 3 and 2s and stuff. We can take a quick peek at some smaller events. I don't know what this one is. I don't know why it doesn't show up on my other search. But it had a 4-1 Necrons at the top. Oh, because it's only a 10 per player event. That's why. So this is a relatively small one. Where was this held, actually? Bolivia. That's kind of rad. I don't know there was a 40k seat in Bolivia. Dude, that rules. What? But it was 1-4-1 by Necrons. Also running Canoptek Court. This one was running Illuminor Szeras. Let's go. Yeah, they probably are like 22 per model. Is probably a little too expensive, I think, for a melee only unit that caps at like 3 attacks. It's like not amazing. I think they're just like paying for the sins of Index Necrons probably. We'll probably see them. I don't think we're gonna see a Necron update in January, but we'll probably see them. Oh, we might. Who knows? We'll just see how the first couple weeks go. But we'll probably see them next year see an update as well. So we'll probably bring those other units back into line. Hopefully. I'm kind of excited for this this next what do you call it? The next Mutatorm Field Manual, because I think it's gonna kind of like display a lot of what the intentionality of the design or the balancing process is. As I'm kind of hoping that we see like a big hefty internal rebalance to a lot of the factions. Like, the factions that only have, like, one playable archetype, I think should maybe get a little bit of a look at. You know, you look at stuff like, you know, Necrons to some extent. We'll see how the new codex works out. But also, like, you know, Adeptus Mechanicus, Astra Militarum, Adeptus Sororitas. Like, all these factions that, like, oh, if you don't play this one way, go fuck yourself. Like, I would like to see those get a little bit of an update to be more interesting. And we'll see if that happens. It'll be interesting. Anyway... and also how deep they go on rebalances. Because I think that, I don't know. I think that the meta's like settling right now to the point that I think the best stuff is just getting better. Because people are learning how to play it, and the people who are learning how to play it are getting really good with it. Like Chaos Space Marines and Eldar are like, I think, sort of creeping away from other factions, in my opinion. But we'll see how it ends up. So this one... we're running Nightbringer, Szeras, Overlord, Double Plasmancer, Technomancer. Now, who is Szeras buffing? The Immortals are the Immortals battle line? I guess it makes sense if they are. Oh yeah, they are, duh. It says it right there. So he can buff them with +1 AP, -1 AP. That's pretty good for the... Oh, we're running all Teslas. AP1 is a little bit funky on them. Although Canoptek Court has Solar Pulse, so they can ignore cover... so ignore cover AP1 is actually, like, fairly reasonable. So I'll buy that. All right, that's solid. Plus we have one single Canoptek Wraith unit, double Doomstalkers, 1 Doomsday Arc, and then a bunch of mounted units for utility. The Scarab Swarms are interesting. I wish if they had an objective control value, they'd be so good in this attachment, because then you could hold objectives and then lone operative them. So you have a little cheap unit that you can throw onto objectives, and then your opponent can't deal with it. But the fact that they're OC0 is big sad for them. But 40 points for a scoring unit, or a secondary completing unit is pretty good. Not as good as Tomb Blades, but they are half the cost, so that's solid. We can also take a look at some of the smaller events, little RTTs. We have a couple undefeated Necrons. Will Milton These are 3-man teams. Interesting. So this is like a mini WTC event. This is another Canoptek court using the Immortal bricks. Kind of what we've talked about before. Triple Wraiths, triple Doomstalkers. Yeah, we talked about basically this exact list. This one had a big focus on Scarab Swarms, though. We were running a million Scarab Swarms. 12? Okay, that's cool. Oh, they can get OC1 from a Technomancer? Oh, is that on their datasheet? That's interesting. I actually had no idea. I did not know that. That's actually sick. Oh, yeah. Unironically, I read this ability and then just stopped reading. I was like, okay, they have the Ripper Swarm shitty objective control manipulation. I did not read the second half where they get an OC value. Wait, that's awesome. What? So you have like a unit that you can lone operative as long as you're 6 inches of like the random idiot who's like hiding in a building inside of a Wraith unit. You can lone operative them. Dude, that rules. Wait, everybody plays Scarab Swarms. These things rule. You can't leave them there. That's the downside. You have to have somebody else there. But it's for the mid-board objectives. It's so you can power matrix. Like, there's always, like, you're pushing the center, right? But then there's always, like, one objective that's, like, off to the side, and you don't really want to send a guy to go deal with it. Because your opponent's just going to shoot them because it's in the middle of nowhere. And, if you just have a unit you can lone op, it's, like, easy. Let's do that, I guess. I guess it's kind of funny because you have to have the Technomancer there. But maybe that's why we're bringing 6. Actually, that's probably why we're bringing 6. So you can string them. So, like, you have a Wraith unit, like, hiding in your deployment zone or outside your deployment zone. And you just string the Scarab Swarm unit all the way to them. And then you can just... It doesn't matter where you're standing because you just load up them anyway. I bet that's exactly what that's for. That's very good. That's very creepy. I love that. That's new codex stuff? Yeah. Yeah, I guess, yeah, I just had no idea. I'll cop that one. I just did not know. A lot of fun with the Enigmatic Annihilator Heavy Destroyers. Yeah, I was literally, I was building my Hypercrypt Legion list, and I was trying to fit that unit in. The full rerolls with the Enigmatic Annihilators just seems like so nutty. It's so many hits, dude. I wish I could get lethal somehow, but then it would be too good, probably. Like, you just fire discipline combo out a stupid unit of Enigmatic Annihilators is probably too good. That's cool. All right. Well, I'm glad we looked at this list because I'm learning so many new things about Necrons today. I think that's... there was an undefeated list. Yeah, there's an undefeated Necron we can look at. Ribby. What a name. Running another Canoptek court. This one is kind of like the 6-0 list. Triple Catan shards. Nightbringer. Gets a Shard of the Void Dragon and Transcendence. Triple or double Technomancer and a Plasmancer for the Immortal squad. Plus Immotech. No. Yeah, yes, cat. No Translocation Shroud for them, but that's probably fine. They can advance anyway. You just roll a 6 on the die. Just roll it. A Spider unit. Plus Scarab Swarms. Tomb Blades, Cryptothralls, and Canoptek Wraiths. The Cryptothralls seem weird. I guess you put them into the Immortals, right? Because they're like a solid addition. I don't think you put them into Canoptek Wraiths because I think they like wildly slow them down, right? So the downside for them is that they lost their Feel No Pain, and then they can only, with the changes to the Cryptek attachments, they have a tougher time joining into things. Yeah, but they're only move 5. So attaching them to a unit of 10 movers, 10-inch movers is probably no good. Rip. But that's okay. And just hang out with the Immortals and make the Immortals harder to kill, because the Immortals are going to draw a lot of fire as soon as they jump out and shoot somebody and kill them. Shoot them for 12 devastating wounds. And I think we will we'll round things out with Carol of the Shells here, I think. Samuel Caruso. Look at this score. 293, but lost the game. Can you imagine a 93-point loss? You just like look at you look at the score sheet like, what else could I have done? Like I did it all. Like I dropped 7 points over the course of the game and still lost. What is that? All right, I have to see what that matchup was. 110. Jesus, that might have been a concession actually. 97-93. Matthew Taggart won. Oh, it was no way. It was a mirror match. Oh my god. Of course it was a mirror match. So I just dumpstered 2 people and then lost by 4 points in the mirror. That's nutty, dude. What did Matthew Taggart place? Oh, he went... Wait a minute. BCP, get your shit together. What? All right. Real talk. This is the only reported Necron list from this event. It was won by a Necron list in the same event that went 3-0. BCP, you're trying to suppress winning lists from the people. It's the technology that everyone needs to see. All right, well, we're talking about Matthew Taggart instead. Who had, what was it? What were his final scores? 197-89. Not quite as impressive, but pretty good. This is also a Canoptek court. This one had a Locust Lord. That's cool. Again, like full rerolls, right? Then you can trigger that critical 5-up critical hit on a 5-up, like super easily. A Chronomancer, Hexmark Destroyer, Locust Lord, Plasmancer, and Technomancer. 2 Catan Shards, 1 Immortal unit. Where are we joining the Locust Lord into? Probably these Locust Destroyers, if I had to hazard to guess. 1 unit of Wraiths, 1 unit of Tomb Blades, 2 units of Deathmarks, 2 Doomstalkers, and a Reanimator. This is kind of all over the place. I kind of like this. A little bit of everything. We got a Locust Brick. We've got an Immortal Brick. No Lord in the Immortal Brick, so we're just paying for the strat, I guess. Plus a bunch of utility units as well. And 2 Catan Shards. Solid. Good stuff. Anyone who liked how Necrons were before and weren't also playing Grey Knights on say GW? Yeah, Necrons are very Grey Knight-y. But, like, to thematically, I don't think that that's, like, totally wrong, right? If you're gonna, like, look at their lore or whatever. 2 friends have been playing Necron since 4th and 5th. Love all the changes? Hell yeah. Yeah, I mean, so... like, Necrons have always had a sub-theme of, like, teleportation and maneuverability, right? Like, they've always had, like, Necrons. Necrons have always had Necrons in their army. I don't know if you knew this yet. There are not a lot of Necron units in a Necron army. I think that... so, I don't think that the... what am I trying to say? I don't think it's, like, coming out of nowhere that Necrons have all this, like, teleportation and maneuverability stuff. Mechanics. I also think that it's way healthier, right? For Necrons to be, like, they're already kind of hard to kill. The problem with Awakened Dynasty is that it just compounded their resilience to the point that it was strictly a strat check. It was like a super toxic mechanic. And even if it was bad, because people teched against it and then beat it, it's just like, it's not an archetype that should really be pushed. Like, it's fine if it exists occasionally, But I don't agree with the fact that like, oh man, Necrons should be like this, just a straight up damage tank that you sponge a bunch of damage up, and if your opponent can't defeat your your opponent can't exceed your capacity to reanimate, you just win and you can't lose at all. Like that's what we saw at the World Championships, right? Like they went into a bunch of matchups. Hey Theo, thank you for the super chat. Is the
Monolith trap in Hypercrypt or worth heavy price point?
That's a great question. I think that it's probably remains to be seen, but my sneaking suspicion is that it is probably a trap. Because you're not just paying for the monolith, right? You're also paying for the units that are arriving from the monolith. And you could just be deep striking those units by themselves. The monolith gets so much support from Hypercrypt Legion, but the problem is that all of that support costs you in both points and command points. And I don't know if it's worth all of that. That said, I'm definitely willing to be proven wrong, and I think that the maneuverability it gives you is super good. I think I'll say this though, I don't think monoliths are bad, right? By any stretch of the imagination. They're not stupid expensive. They are very expensive, but they're not dumb. And if you were going to run a monolith, Hypercrypt Legion is 100% the place to put it down. Even if you're not teleporting infantry out of it. Even if you're just using it as like a big weapon platform, like we saw in Awakened to Dynasty for a while, the fact that it gives you the 3-inch deep strike, come on, cat. The fact that it gives you the 3-inch deep strike means that the positions a monolith can arrive from is like so much harder to screen out. Like right now, I think some people in chat were pointing it out. Like the monolith is super sad because it has a tough time setting up around terrain. And if your opponent takes advantage of that and they screen around the terrain that you can arrive the monolith from, they can actually get a lot of extra value out of their screening units. But being able to come closer means that the monolith it's harder to do that, which I think is good. Plus, you get the invulnerable save, which is sweet too. So yeah, I think the Hypercrypt monolith is cool. Plus, you can just you can keep jumping it around. So if your opponent's like, "Oh, I'll hide from the monolith and I'm not going to kill it," you're just like, "All right, I'm just going to chase you." It removes its poor maneuverability as a concern, which I think is super good. Yeah, I mean, I think like all of the monolith stratagems are really costly, right? You've got like you want to be invulnerable saving it, you want to be charging with units out of it, you want to be pulling units back to it, and like that's cool, but like you don't have 4 CP to spend on it every turn. Like plus you might want a 3-inch deep strike hit. So it's like to do all of the things that you can do with a monolith every turn costs you literally all of your CP for the game. And I don't think that's entirely efficient, but I think having a monolith, like to have a monolith and be able to jump infantry out of it's pretty good. Immortal, yeah. Immortal, I mean, he's just good, right? Just 5 CP over a game is like pretty solid. Although a lot of times you're playing, I think especially with Hypercrypt Legion, you're playing tacticals, and I think that like because your maneuverability is so strong, I think that tacticals are very good for that detachment because you can put Hexmark destroyers in reserve and then just jump them around, which is also sweet. If enemy run a reserve blocker near the monolith, it gets neutered. I mean, that is the case, but like what we're talking about, like that's why you have to kill them, right? That's why we saw that list with like 20 flayed ones. It was just to kill all that stuff, like get rid of them. And if their reserve blockers are protecting their deployment zone, then that's good, but they're not stopping your big guns from setting up everywhere. Ran 2 monoliths in hyperphase and it was great. Hell yeah. Yeah, no rerolls on them sucks. I wish like a Risen Tyrant gave you an aura or something. Like I wish there was a way to buff accuracy. That would probably be too much though. Just run Silent King. Easy. I think originally like the first list I made was like, all right, what we're gonna do is we're just gonna bank our CP to Cosmic Precision Silent King out of reserve every turn. And then we're just going to deep strike stuff next to him, and he's going to give them rerolls. 420 points for that guy. That guy's like a 360 in the body of a 420 pointer. He is I mean, I guess I gotta table him to see how it feels, but he does not feel like 420 points worth of damage. I don't know. The hazardous strat. I don't know if I've talked about the hazardous strat. I think I did, but I don't know if the video's out yet. We have to talk about the hazardous strat because I think it might be one of the worst stratagems in the game. It's fortunate for Hypercrypt Legion that it's otherwise pretty good because oh my god, is that a fucking horrible stratagem? Yeah, here we go. So entropic dampening is the one. It affects a Titanic unit that was selected as the target of one or more ranged attacks, and is within 18 inches of the attacking unit. So, it gives until the end of the phase. Important to know, until the end of the phase, weapons equipped by models and the attacking unit have hazardous. So, unlike other defensive stratagems, it does not affect other things that target the Titanic unit. So like most of the time, right, you're like, okay, we'll turn on quantum deflection, right? Quantum deflection says until the end of the phase you get a 4+1 save. Great. Entropic dampening doesn't do that. Entropic dampening gives the unit targeting you hazardous. So a single enemy unit. The funny part about it is that it gives all their weapons hazardous. It doesn't just specify attacks targeting the Titan. So one like funny interaction is that you can have like a tactical squad shoot their las cannon at your monolith, and then their bolters at your warriors, and then you entropic dampening and give all of their weapons hazardous. That's kind of funny. But let's think about what hazardous does. It gives you a 1 in 6 chance to lose a model. It's chosen by the model's controller. So if you give hazardous to all the weapons in a unit, and they have multiple weapon profiles, they're always going to take failed hazardous checks on the models that with the worst guns. So you're never going to get the powerful guns out of a unit using it. Plus, it's only a 1 in 6 chance. So if it's a unit of 10 models, you're only ever going to affect like 2, maybe. If you're lucky, you'll get 2 guys with it. So like you could pay a CP when a like 10-man unit of Space Marine shoots you to maybe kill 2 bolter guys. What? And only if they're within 18 inches of you. There's a range restriction on it too. It's so bad. Plus, hazardous checks are re-rollable. If your opponent really doesn't, like, they roll really bad, they could just re-roll out of taking out on, like, a character or something. Oh my god. This stratagem is so fucking garbage. Fortunately for Hypercrypt Legion, it doesn't really matter because all their other stratagems are good and the detachment is generally strong. But, like, oh my god. What were they worried about? I think the design team wildly overestimates the power of hazardous. I don't think that they've like run the numbers and actually understand what hazardous does, because there are a lot of effects in 40k that apply hazardous to enemy weapons and they're treated like it's a really powerful effect, and it's fucking garbage. If hazardous did more things, I think it would be good, but I love that stratagem just because of how absolutely garbage it is. It's so funny. Silent King needs more shots on his plasma profile. Which one is his plasma profile? His scepter? Yeah, I could see that. I mean, that one's like, I don't know. That one feels like it's like it's sort of a gimme. Like, you're excited to have an indirect fire gun, even if it's not a great indirect fire gun. Like, it's good to just put pressure on objective holders. So like he can start the game out and just start killing your opponents like scouts on objectives and stuff. He's not going to kill the whole unit, but he's going to slowly whittle them down over like 2 turns. He'll probably kill a lot of them. And then the Annihilator beams are like the big thing. They're only reached 24 now. I didn't realize that. They used to be 48, right? Or 36? I think they were 36 from the mini years. I mean, benefit is that you can reanimate the miniers, though, right? So that's something. You can also he's not like weirdly keyword restricted on Technomancers, so you can also repair him more easily too. Like, there are some benefits to the Silent King. I don't think he's great, though. He's way too expensive. Make hazardous on a 1 to 3. I think it's too... Oh, if the stratagem made your hazardous on a 1 to 3? Yeah. Now we're talking, right? Like, now we're like, oh, shit. Do I attack that guy? Oh, my God. If I shoot that thing, there's a pretty reasonable chance I fucking die. Like, that's... Suddenly, your opponent's thinking about the stratagem. You're still going to do it, because if you can kill the Monolith, it's like... And your opponent pays a CP, and the Monolith trades for the shitty unit attacking it, sure. But, like... The stratagem as it stands is just, like, so trash. I think, in my opinion... I've talked about this before. In my opinion, hazardous should be D3 mortals on a 1 or a 2. Or like a destroyed model or D3 mortals. It's 2, or even just do D3 mortals. Like, I don't give a shit. Who cares? The problem is that it's not even a consideration right now. You always trigger your overcharge if you have it, unless it's statistically meaningless, because the number of times it comes into play is so low, and the opportunity cost is so low as well. It needs to trigger more often. But that's my 2 cents. I'm fine with the, like, I like that the failure kills one guy. Like, it's like clean that you're just like roll a failure, the guy with the hazardous weapon dies. I think the danger becomes when hazardous like is too strong and like it just vaporizes your characters and vehicles when you use it, because then it's like actually bad. So I think you make the flat, like, I don't know why it does 3 flat damage. It's like such a weird number. I don't know. When you apply it to a vehicle or something. I just wish it affected more. It triggered more often and it affected stuff. Because previously you would almost never trigger like gets hot stuff, because you would reroll. You would take them in situations where you could reroll the hit roll anyway. So the number of times you actually like you had like 2 or 3 times a chance to trigger gets hot than you do hazardous, because you would roll for each attack instead of each weapon fired. But you would almost always reroll out of your ones. It was also just rerolls were super duper prevalent. So like, I think you were probably equally. I guess like you were a little bit more on average more likely to trigger gets hot than you do hazardous. But the hazardous, I think they applied hazardous to more things in 10th edition, which was just kind of a mistake in my opinion. Yeah, hazardous is like dark banks, yeah. Yeah, they took the abilities that are like a big risk and a big reward and just made them just not even a risk at all, basically. The fact that Chaos Icons reroll Battle Shock, the leadership check for Dark Packs, is like just like tilts me so hard. Like, why? why doesn't anyone else have any sort of like leadership affecting mechanics? And they're just like, no, that's fine. The Chaos Icon makes it better to make packs with demons. Whatever. Hazardous is keeping Crisis Suits manageable. I mean, I guess. Crisis Suits aren't even that good, though, right? They're not even widely played. Like, I shouldn't say that. In Tau armies, they're very widely played, but Tau's not doing that well right now. And to be fair, like, if you made it less damage but trigger more often, it's probably worse for Crisis Battlesuits, right? Because right now, it triggers 1 in 6 and kills half of a battlesuit. If you made it kill, on average, a third of a battlesuit, but trigger 1 in 3 times, you're doubling the consistency that it triggers, but reducing the amount of damage they take by 30%. So, or I guess by 50%. So it's still worse for Crisis Battlesuits in that case. And you could even have Crisis Battlesuits like have a special effect or something, like, oh, you only take 1 from a failed hazardous or something. D3 minus 1, I don't know, whatever. I just think it's not a very good mechanic as it stands. Anyway, chat, I think we're gonna go ahead and wrap things up for the day there. This has been a good discussion, though. I like to see all the different Necron armies. It seems like, I mean, Canoptek Court, I think, is like far and away the best Necron detachment, and I think that's a little bit sad. It feels like this brace of codexes does not have good internal balance. At least within their own detachments. I think like there are a couple different archetypes you can play within them, which is cool, and that'll probably settle out into one or two. But the downside is that the other detachments are just trash. And I think that that's sad, and I would like to see that change. And hopefully we'll see some changes within future Munitorum Field manuals to update those. For the time being, though, I think we're going to get 6 months of pretty good Necrons, right? Of just like really interesting and dynamic Necron lists. I'm kind of like, I'm mildly terrified of Canoptek Court. I think Canoptek Court is like super good. We'll see if people pick it up to the point that it, you know, starts to compete with other stuff. I do think that like the top of the metagame is still going to probably kill it, but the amount of the insane toolbox it has is like super duper useful. But yeah, anyway, I am going to pop off. So please come hang out with me over on the Purple channel. Assuming that I can find a game, I think I'm going to be playing some Necrons over there right after this. We're going to be commentating a game in 3 and a little bit hours. So hopefully we'll be live for the rest of the evening over there on the Twitchies. So please come hang out with me over there. Otherwise, I think that we will take a look at... I will be live next week. Next week is the 26th. So yeah, we'll be live next week. It'll be after Christmas, so we probably won't have new results to talk about, but I'd like to do a deep dive into Adeptus Mechanicus, so that's probably when we'll do that. And look at some lists from that codex. And otherwise, I hope everyone has a wonderful holiday. There won't be a new our best armies in 40k video next week, most likely, because I don't think that there are going to be that many events. If there are events, I might do a short one, so there might be a little bit of a one, but and I'll probably have some videos coming out for the remainder of this week. Otherwise, I will probably be relatively silent until next Tuesday because of all of the holidays. But I hope everyone has a wonderful holiday and enjoys their time hanging out with people. And we'll be back with some sweet 40k content next week. So anyway, chat, I am going to pop off. See you all. Remember to keep it classy, folks. Have happy wargaming, all that stuff. And I'll see you around.